People will use you until you do this. Not because they're evil. Not because you attract users. Because you're broadcasting availability. And available people get used. Every single time. Here's what you don't realize. Your kindness isn't being seen as kindness. It's being read as weakness. Your generosity isn't being appreciated. It's being interpreted as desperation. Your reliability isn't being valued. It's being exploited as predictability. And the people using you aren't doing it maliciously. They're doing it naturally. Because you've made yourself the path of least resistance. And humans, like water, like electricity, always take the path of least resistance. You're always available. They'll use your availability. You never say no. They'll exploit your compliance. You overfunction in relationships. They'll underfunction and let you carry the weight. You accommodate endlessly. They'll endlessly demand accommodation. This isn't personal. This is psychology. Dark psychology. The psychology of how humans unconsciously identify and exploit accessible resources. And you've made yourself an accessible resource. Here's what's happening that you can't see. You think you're being kind, generous, reliable, and good. And you are. But they're not reading those qualities as virtues. They're reading them as signals. Signals that say, this person has weak boundaries. This person needs to be needed. This person won't enforce consequences. This person is exploitable. And once those signals are broadcast, you attract users like blood attracts sharks. Not because you're doing something wrong morally, because you're doing something recognizable tactically. But here's what changes everything. There's a specific transformation you can undergo. A psychological shift so profound that people stop being able to use you. Not because you become mean, because you become untouchable. You develop what Jung called integrating the shadow, bringing out the monster in the garden, the part of you that can say no, that can withdraw, that can become inconvenient, that can bite. In the next 25 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why people use you. The 9 psychological concepts that explain the entire dynamic, and the complete transformation from available to valuable, from used to respected. Because respect doesn't come from being endlessly giving. It comes from being selectively unavailable. Let me show you the dark psychology of being used and how to stop it forever. Here's the brutal truth about why your kindness is being read as weakness. Kind behavior and weak behavior look identical from the outside. Someone watching you be kind can't tell if you're choosing kindness from strength or performing kindness from fear. And humans, unconsciously, test to determine which one it is. They push boundaries, violate small limits, make unreasonable requests, and they watch your response. Do you enforce consequences, or do you accommodate and explain? If you enforce consequences, they learn. This person is choosing kindness from strength. Push too far, and the kindness ends. This person has a monster in the garden. Don't wake it. If you accommodate and explain, they learn. This person is performing kindness from weakness. They need to be liked. They fear conflict. They won't enforce consequences. This is weakness disguised as kindness. This person is exploitable. Let me show you exactly how this works and why you're being misread. The signal confusion. Here's what you're doing. You're being kind, helpful, available, accommodating. You think these behaviors signal, I'm a good person, I care about others, I'm reliable, I'm valuable to have in your life. And sometimes they do signal that, to secure healthy people who reciprocate. But to users, conscious or unconscious, those same behaviors signal something completely different. I'm desperate to be valued. I need to be needed. I fear rejection. I won't say no. I'm available for exploitation. Same behaviors, two completely different interpretations. The interpretation depends on what else they see. Do they see boundaries, consequences, selective unavailability, self-respect? If yes, your kindness reads as strength. If no, your kindness reads as weakness. Real talk. Think about someone you respect deeply. Someone whose boundaries you'd never violate. Someone you treat well naturally. Why do you respect them? Probably not just because they're kind. Probably because they're kind, and they have clear limits. They're generous, and they can say no. They're helpful, and they're not always available. That combination, kindness plus boundaries, creates respect. Kindness alone, without boundaries, creates exploitation. Because kindness without limits looks like neediness, and neediness invites manipulation. The testing mechanism. Here's how people test whether your kindness is strength or weakness. They escalate demands gradually. Start small, reasonable request. You fulfill it gladly. They watch. Did you fulfill it enthusiastically? Or reluctantly, but unable to say no? If enthusiastically, maybe it's genuine generosity. They test again. Slightly larger request, less reasonable. You fulfill it. Again they watch. Still enthusiastic? Or accommodating despite discomfort? This continues. Each request slightly more unreasonable. Each fulfillment watched carefully. Are you giving because you want to? Or giving because you can't say no? Eventually, they cross a line. Make clearly unreasonable request. Violate obvious boundary. And they watch. Do you enforce consequence? Or do you accommodate while expressing discomfort? If you enforce consequence, that's not acceptable. I won't be doing that, they learn. Strength. This person was choosing kindness, not performing it from weakness. Back off. Show respect. If you accommodate while expressing discomfort. I really wish you wouldn't do this. But okay, I'll help. They learn. Weakness. This person can't say no even when they want to. This is exploitable kindness. Continue escalating. That testing process is often unconscious. Most users don't consciously think, let me test if this person is weak. They just naturally push boundaries and observe responses. It's instinctive human behavior. We all test relationships to understand their limits. The problem is, your pattern is failing the test. You keep accommodating past your comfort. You keep explaining instead of enforcing. You keep giving even when you don't want to. That pattern broadcasts weakness, and weakness invites exploitation. The covert contract trap. Here's another reason your kindness is being misread. You're operating under a covert contract, an unspoken agreement you think exists, but nobody else agreed to. The covert contract sounds like this. I'll be endlessly kind, helpful, and available. And in exchange, you'll appreciate me, value me, treat me well, and reciprocate my generosity. That sounds fair. That sounds like reasonable exchange. There's just one problem. The other person never agreed to this contract. You created it unilaterally in your mind. And you're now hurt and resentful that they're violating a contract they don't know exists. You give and give and give, expecting reciprocation, expecting appreciation, expecting value. And when they take and take and take without reciprocating, you feel used, betrayed, taken advantage of. But here's the dark psychology truth. You weren't betrayed. You were operating under false pretenses. You are giving with hidden expectations. That's not genuine kindness. That's strategic niceness designed to create obligation. And when people sense that, when they sense you're giving to create obligation rather than from genuine generosity, they resent the manipulation. So they take without reciprocating, to reject the covert contract you're trying to impose. Real talk. Most nice people aren't actually nice. They're strategic. They're giving to get. They're performing kindness to create obligation. That's manipulation disguised as virtue, and people sense it. They can't articulate it, but they sense something's off. So they take without reciprocating, which feels to you like being used, but to them feels like rejecting manipulation. The actually kind person gives without expectation, helps because they choose to, is available when they want to be, and says no when they don't want to. That person's kindness is genuine because it's chosen, not performed to create obligation. That person rarely gets used, because genuine generosity without neediness doesn't broadcast exploitability. The neediness signal, here's the core issue: your excessive availability, endless accommodation, and inability to say no all broadcast the same signal. Neediness. You need to be needed. You need to be valued. You need to feel useful. You need to avoid rejection. That neediness is what users detect, like predators detecting wounded prey. Not consciously, necessarily, but instinctively. They sense, this person needs me to need them, which means I have power. I can take without giving, because they won't risk losing me by enforcing boundaries. And they're right. You won't enforce boundaries because you're afraid. Afraid if you say no, they'll leave. Afraid if you're not always available, they'll stop valuing you. Afraid if you're not endlessly helpful, you'll be replaced. That fear drives your overgiving, and that fear is what makes you exploitable. Users don't respect neediness. They exploit it, because neediness signals desperation, and desperate people accept poor treatment. So users provide poor treatment because they can, because you won't stop them. Here's what's hard to hear. The more you give from neediness, the less you're valued, because people intuitively recognize that needy giving isn't gift. It's purchase attempt. You're trying to purchase their love, acceptance, or validation with your overfunctioning. And that purchase attempt is transparent and unattractive and exploitable. The monster in the garden concept. Here's what changes everything. You need to develop what Jordan Peterson calls the monster in the garden, the capacity for aggression, boundary enforcement, and withdrawal that makes you dangerous to exploit. Most nice people are harmless, not because they're virtuous, because they're incapable of being harmful. They can't say no, can't enforce consequences, can't become inconvenient, can't bite back. They're not choosing kindness. They're incapable of anything else. That harmlessness is what makes them exploitable, because there's no cost to exploiting them, no danger, no risk. They'll never fight back, never withdraw, never become problem. So why not exploit them? There's no downside. But the person with the monster in the garden is different. They're capable of harm, capable of enforcement, capable of withdrawal, capable of becoming very inconvenient very quickly. They choose not to because the relationship is good. But the capacity is visible. It's in the garden, usually asleep, but awakeable if you push too far. That capacity, that potential for harm if provoked, creates respect. Not fear necessarily. Respect. Because people know this person is being kind by choice. not from inability to do otherwise. If I violate boundaries, the kindness ends and something much less pleasant begins. Better not test that. That's the monster in the garden, the part of you that can enforce, that can say no firmly, that can withdraw completely, that can become cold if necessary, that can protect yourself even if it makes others uncomfortable. Right now, you don't have that. You only have kindness, which means your kindness isn't choice. It's your only option, and that makes it weakness. Develop the monster, the capacity for the opposite, and your kindness becomes strength, because now it's chosen, not forced by inability to do otherwise. Why this matters, here's why. Understanding this matters. Until you recognize that your kindness is being read as weakness, you'll keep being confused about why people use you. I'm so kind to them. Why do they treat me poorly? Because your kindness signals weakness, signals neediness, signals exploitability. And humans, even good humans, unconsciously exploit exploitable resources. It's not personal. It's psychological mechanics. The transformation isn't becoming mean. It's developing capacity for meanness that you choose not to use most of the time. It's integrating the shadow, bringing out the monster, making it visible in the garden even while it sleeps. When people see you can say no, but choose yes, your yes has value. When people see you can withdraw but choose to stay, your presence has meaning. When people see you can enforce consequences but choose kindness, your kindness has power. But when people see you can only do one thing, be endlessly available, accommodating, and kind, that behavior has no value. Because it's not choice, it's compulsion driven by neediness and fear. Develop capacity for the opposite, and everything changes. Your kindness stops reading as weakness and starts reading as strength, and people stop using you because you stop being safely exploitable. Now let me show you the complete psychological framework that explains this dynamic. First concept that explains why you're being used: the law of scarcity. Basic economics and psychology. Abundant things have low value. Scarce things have high value. You've made yourself abundant, therefore low value. You're always available. Return texts immediately. Always willing to help. Never too busy. Always accommodating. That abundance, that constant availability, makes your time, energy, and presence low value. Why would anyone prioritize low-value resources? Users don't value abundant resources. They exploit them. Because there's always more where that came from. You're like free bread at restaurant. People take it, don't value it, because it's abundant and free. Here's the dark psychology. Scarcity creates value perception. Sparse availability makes your time seem valuable. Selective responsiveness makes your attention seem precious. Occasional unavailability makes your presence seem special. The transformation. Apply the law of scarcity to yourself. Become less available. Not to everyone, but strategically. You're not always free. You're not instantly responsive. You have other priorities, other relationships, other commitments. Your availability is finite resource, limited, scarce. That scarcity transforms perception. Suddenly, your time has value. Your attention is precious. Your presence is gift not given freely. And valuable things don't get exploited. They get respected and appreciated. Stop being abundant. Become scarce. And watch how your value perception transforms immediately. Second concept, the covert contract. This is why you feel used even though you're voluntarily giving. Because you're not actually giving. You're investing with expectation of return. but you never made the expectation explicit. So it's covert contract. Here's how it works. You do things for people. Give time, energy, help, resources, support. But you're doing it with hidden expectation. If I do this, they'll appreciate me, value me, reciprocate, treat me well. That expectation is the contract, but it's covert because you never stated it. You just assumed it. Assumed giving would create obligation. Assumed kindness would generate reciprocity. Assumed overfunctioning would produce gratitude. When they don't reciprocate, when they take without giving back, you feel violated, betrayed, used, because they violated the contract. But here's the problem. They never agreed to the contract. You created it unilaterally, in your mind, without their knowledge or consent. That covert contract is manipulation. Unconscious manipulation, but manipulation nonetheless. You're trying to create obligation through giving. You're trying to purchase appreciation, love, or validation with your overfunctioning. That's transactional, not generous. And people sense it. They can't articulate it, but they sense your giving has strings attached, has hidden expectations, isn't genuine gift, is investment expecting return. So they resist reciprocating, because reciprocating would be accepting the covert contract you're trying to impose. Real talk. Every time you felt used, examine whether you were operating under covert contract. Were you giving genuinely or giving to get? Were you helping from generosity or helping to create obligation? Were you available from kindness or available to prove your value? If you were operating covertly, contractually, you weren't used. You were engaged in failed transaction. You invested expecting return. Didn't get it. That's not being used. That's bad investment. The transformation. Eliminate covert contracts completely. Give only what you genuinely want to give, with zero expectation of return. Help only when you actually want to help. Be available only when you actually want to be available. If you're giving to create obligation, don't give. If you're helping to prove value, don't help. If you're available to avoid rejection, become unavailable. Genuine giving, giving without hidden expectations, rarely leads to feeling used, because there's nothing to violate. You gave because you wanted to. They received. Transaction complete. No obligation created. No expectation unmet. No feeling used. Make all contracts explicit. If you want reciprocity, state it. I'll help you with this if you help me with that. Explicit. Negotiated. Both parties agree. That's honest transaction. Or give with zero expectation. True gift. No strings, no hidden hopes, no covert contracts. Just generosity. And if they don't reciprocate, you're not upset, because you weren't expecting reciprocation. You gave because you chose to, not to create obligation. Eliminate covert contracts and eliminate 90% of feeling used. Concept 2. The covert contract. You feel used because you're giving with hidden expectations. If I help them, they'll appreciate me. That's covert contract. Unspoken agreement they never agreed to. You're not being generous. You're investing expecting return. When they don't reciprocate, you feel betrayed, but they never agreed to your contract. Solution. Give only what you genuinely want to give with zero expectations, or make contracts explicit. I'll help if you help me. Stop hidden transactions disguised as generosity. Concept 3. Emotional autonomy. Gray rock users manipulate through emotional leverage. They trigger guilt, fear, need for approval. Those emotional reactions are their control buttons. Gray rock method. Become emotionally unresponsive. They trigger guilt, feel nothing, or don't act on it. My decision stands. They threaten conflict. Stay calm. You're welcome to be upset. They withdraw approval? Unaffected. That's your choice. When buttons don't work, manipulation stops. Build emotional autonomy. Your feelings aren't controlled by their manipulation attempts. Concept 4. Shadow integration. You've repressed everything not nice. Anger, selfishness, saying no, aggression. That makes you one-dimensional and weak. Shadow integration means acknowledging those parts exist and developing capacity to use them when needed. You're not replacing kindness with cruelty. You're adding capacity for cruelty to your toolkit. Now you have range, can be kind or firm as needed. That's the monster in the garden. Visible capacity for harm that you choose not to use. That potential creates respect. Concept 5. Boundary psychology. Your boundaries aren't real. Their preferences open for respect. Real boundaries have 3 parts: clear statement, plus inevitable consequence, plus immediate enforcement. If you cancel without notice, I stop making plans with you. Statement, plus consequence. Then when violated, implement immediately. No discussion, no second chances. Consequence happens. That teaches. This boundary is real. Violation costs something. Better not violate. Concept 6. Availability. Trap of being always available destroys your value. Constant availability creates expectation. Expectation eliminates gratitude. No gratitude enables exploitation. They don't think, how generous anymore. They think, of course they're available. Solution. Strategic unavailability. Sometimes you're free, sometimes you're not. Unpredictable availability prevents expectation, preserves gratitude, prevents exploitation. Concept 7. Reciprocity test. Give small early and watch what comes back. If nothing returns, you've identified non-reciprocator. Stop investing. They revealed character. If they reciprocate, safe to invest more. Most people who feel used never tested reciprocity. They gave big before knowing if person gives back. Test early with small favors. Invest only in proven reciprocators. Maintain distance from non-reciprocators. Concept 8. Value inversion. The more you give, the less you're valued. Human psychology assigns value through scarcity, not abundance. You've made yourself abundant, always available, always giving. Therefore, low value. High value people are scarce, limited availability, selective giving. Solution. Invert your value by inverting your availability. Stop overgiving. Start selective giving. Become scarce. Value perception transforms immediately. Concept 9. Mental untouchability. Ultimate psychological state where manipulation doesn't work anymore. 3 foundations. 1. Internal worth. Your value comes from principles, not others' opinions. 2. Emotional autonomy. Your feelings are self-regulated, not dependent on others' behavior. 3. Values-based decisions. Your choices follow your values, not seeking approval. With all 3, there's no external leverage point. Manipulation attempts bounce off. You're psychologically self-sufficient and untouchable. The transformation. Available to valuable, phase 1. Recognition document every time you feel used. Ask, was I operating covert contract? Did I fail to enforce boundaries? Was I over-available? Recognize your patterns. Identify who takes without giving. Phase 2. Boundaries. Define 3 core boundaries. Create 3-tier consequences. Enforce immediately when violated. First violation, warning. Second, consequence implemented. Third, severe consequence or exit. Consistency is everything. Phase 3. Scarcity, reduce availability 50%. Slower responses. sometimes unavailable. Unpredictable availability. Watch responses. Respectful adjusters. Keep. Uncomfortable complainers. Maintain boundaries. Hostile responders. Distance immediately their users. Phase 4. Shadow list repressed qualities. Anger. Selfishness. Saying no. Withdrawal. Practice expressing them appropriately. Develop range. Not replacing kindness with cruelty. Adding capacity for both. That completeness is strength. Phase 5. Autonomy. Map emotional triggers. Guilt, fear, approval needs. Practice not responding. Feel emotion. Don't act on it. Gray rock manipulation attempts. Over weeks, triggers lose power. You become emotionally untouchable. Phase 6. Reconstruction. Maintain scarcity permanently. Stay selectively available. Keep boundaries enforced. Continue shadow integration. Preserve emotional autonomy. Your value is now reconstructed through scarcity and strength. People who respect boundaries stay. Users exit. You're no longer exploitable. The result. Some days, complete transformation. From available to valuable. From used to respected. Same you, different signals, different boundaries, different availability, different treatment. You've built the monster in the garden, integrated your shadow, established real boundaries, achieved emotional autonomy, become mentally untouchable. Nobody can use you anymore. Not because they became better, because you became unviolatable.